everybody. Welcome to the Spiritual Connection Show. I'm your host, Katie Augustyn. So I'm a transformation coach. I'm a spiritual energy healer. I'm a shamanic practitioner, and I'm the head of the Transformation Center CT, which is based in Westport, Connecticut. So at the center, in addition to the individual healing sessions and coaching that I do, we also have a variety of workshops and classes. Sometimes we do retreats. We have sound baths in the backyard during the nice weather, which are phenomenal. You know, and I'm going to put up our contact info just so you can see the website and how to get in touch with us. You know, and so everything we do here at the center is really focused on helping you experience a greater self-awareness so you can transform all of your limiting beliefs and then access your inner knowing to be who you truly are and live the life that you want. So that's what we're all about. So look on the website for the events and you can check them out and register or contact us anytime. All right. So as you may know, the Spiritual Connection Show is all about connection. What a surprise. You know, it's one of my core values. And I started the show because I love connecting with you, meeting new people, finding out what they're all about. And then I want you as our audience to connect with all the guests that I have each week, hear about their journey, what's in it for you, learn about yourself through other people's journeys, as well as find out what they have to offer you. So today you're in for a real good interview because I am talking to Melissa Bernstein. Welcome to the show, Melissa.
Thanks, Katie. So happy to be here.
Yeah, I am really happy to see you. I just met Melissa last week for the first time, even though we're fellow Westporters. We live probably not even a mile apart. But I heard her, she was the guest speaker at an event that I attended. And, once I heard her, I really connected with her story. And I wanted all of you to hear that and learn about what she's been through and how she's created something that's helping so many people. So I'm just going to read a little bit about her for those of you who don't know her yet. Okay, so Melissa is an entrepreneur. She's a creative and working mother of 6. As co-founder of the wildly successful toy company, Melissa and Doug, Melissa has spent the last 30 years helping children discover themselves, their passions, and their purpose through open-ended play. And I just love that. And look at the background that she has. Say something so they can see the background.
Yep, this is my children's playroom and their artwork, and some of our toys are around there. That way. Wait, that way. I'm reversed.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. So then what happens? So I'm going to just put up the slide with the lifelines info because I'll say a little bit about that. Let's see. Did it come up? Not yet. There we go. Okay. So in 2020, after her own personal journey of self-discovery and acceptance, Melissa founded Lifelines. So through Lifelines, she is using her unparalleled creativity and imagination to reinvent well-being products and experiences to help adults strengthen their resilience, stay grounded, and unlock their full potential. So you can check out the website. We're going to look at that a little bit later on. But this is all of her social media you can check out. Okay. So what we decided to do today, because Melissa has so much to share with us, I didn't want to limit it to 30 minutes and cut anything short. So what we decided to do was make this a 2-parter. So in part 1, Melissa's going to talk about her journey and all of that experience that she wants to share with you. And then in part 2, she's going to share about Lifelines and how that can help so many people. All right. Well, I'm really excited to get started. But, the first question I typically ask my guests, and this is very open-ended, and I'm sure it will fit right in with what you have to say, is can you just share with us, your spiritual journey, how that's unfolded for you? And that fits perfectly, right?
Yeah. I mean, that is the journey. So gosh, my whole transformation has been a spiritual journey because I was afflicted from my earliest recollection with something that is actually a spiritual philosophical condition. And that's called existential angst or existential depression. And I didn't even know that I was afflicted with this until only about 5 years ago. So, I was born really kind of thinking that something was very off with me. And I don't know if any of you listening have always had this sense that just this unsettledness, that this not quite rightness that never went away. And it was like an itch you couldn't scratch. And for me, it was basically a meaning crisis, a crisis of profound loss of meaning, in that I was asking myself from the earliest ages, like, why am I here? What is the meaning of life if we are all ultimately just going to expire? And what am I supposed to do during my brief time here? And because, unfortunately, I couldn't even necessarily like verbalize those questions, much less ask them of others, I lived in this continual sense of unsettledness, of anxiety, that everyone around me seemed so happy. They seemed so carefree, and I was so care-filled. And I couldn't understand how they could just go through life sort of blissfully enjoying things when like doom was imminent, and they weren't seemingly engaging in anything of lasting value. So that was tough.
Yeah,
And when I tried to voice this level of malaise with those around me, I would say the reaction I got was like nothing short of like horror. When you're a little kid and you're asking like these deep philosophical questions, people around you are terrified. And they would look at me, and very early on, I was like, oh gosh, I cannot show this level of distress to the world. So I got this message early on: you are a child. You are not to ask such big questions. You are, and everyone said you're too emotional. You're too soulful. You're too churning. You're too introspective. You're too anguished. You're too questioning. Like, be a child and go out and play.
which is not helpful. I mean, just the opposite. Yeah, you used the word overexcitabilities the other day when you were talking. I've done a lot of work with that myself with children. Yeah. And it's a highly sensitive. Yeah.
Yes, there's been a lot around HSPs, highly sensitive people, which is the emotional overexcitability. But there are 5 of them. And it turns out, again, only realizing this, too late, to be honest with you. And that's part of my goal now, is to show people that they may have these earlier and that they can embrace them rather than disdain them. So, but there are 5 of them. There's emotional, which is the one we all know about, right? Highly sensitive emotional types. But there's also intellectual, those who are constantly pondering these deep questions and need to have answers. So sort of that fervent curiosity and voracious need to learn and connect dots and have wisdom and insights like arise from it. There's imaginational, where you are entirely in your head and can envision beauty from the boundless expanse of white space. There is sensual, where you're really acutely aware of each of your senses and you have hypersensitivities. Like every one of my senses, I have a light sensitivity. Certain lights like trigger me, and I have to like hide myself, sounds that are too loud. So it's everything, touches. And then there's psychomotor, which can sort of mimic ADHD. It's this heightened arousal and just this excess of energy, where it feels like you're impelled to continually be doing, be achieving, and I would wake up in the middle of the night and I'd feel this sense like I had to be doing something, like, but I didn't know what it was. And it was like, I needed to quell this sense, like I just had to do something. And it was an awful feeling because I didn't know what it was I needed to do, but I continually felt this need I had to be doing. So I was born with like all 5 of these to the highest degree. It's who I am. But unfortunately, society said to me, nope, this is not acceptable by societal standards. You are weird. You are not acting like you are supposed to act by societal definition of what a child is and does. And because of that, you are not accepted as you are. So when our most innate need is to be accepted and belong, and society tells us from pretty much age 4 on, like, you're weird, you are not accepted, and you are not going to fit in as you are, I, by nature, needed to change who I was. And when you're not accepted, you learn to despise who you are and feel like you have to be someone else. So for me, my life became sort of hiding, repressing, denying all emotion that wasn't shiny, and anything that was pondering and churning and questioning, including my own creativity, which I just, channeled continually, but just hid away in dark drawers where no one would ever see it, because it was soulful and dark and pondering and questioning. And I adopted a facade, which centered around sort of 2 areas. One is, and I still haven't answered your spiritual question, that's like at the end, but now that I realize it, you asked me a question.
Well, no, it's fine. I just want to hear about your journey. There's no answer here. It's just
because I can't tell you the spiritual is the solution to this
okay.
this life that I went through. So unfortunately, I can't answer that until you know what the issue is. But basically, I adopted a facade through my whole life, which was basically pleasing as a method of receiving validation, like becoming the girl who couldn't say no, and like doing everything that was expected of me with a smile on my face, even though I didn't feel that smile. And then perfectionism, which was a much more, much deeper scourge, and really almost like ended my life, because I became sort of so black and white, all or nothing thinking, right? 100% was acceptable, 99% not. And that was in my performance, it was in my looks, it was in my behavior, it was in everything that I theoretically could control. And of course, perfectionists ultimately, I believe, if you are born with that highly perfectionistic mentality, you have to crash ultimately, because we are human and we are imperfect. So ultimately, the bar for me, like, it was a long time until I crashed, because I could achieve, unfortunately. So like the bar just kept getting higher and higher, but ultimately I had my coming, and I did completely crash, because I had both a academic failure in my mind, which again wasn't a failure by most people's standards, and I had a social failure simultaneously, and the 2 just completely threw me into sort of an all-out breakdown.
Were you a young adult at that time?
I was in college. And that's usually when perfectionists, because now I try to help so many, especially females who really are very similar to how I was, to try to not get to that point. Because what happened to me, I'm a creative, and I never realized it, because anything associated with my creativity was weird. So my essence is that I am a creative person, and I need to continually channel that despair into creative expression. Like, I need the chaos to turn into tangible form that can touch others. And that is where I find my purpose. But in college, and most of my life, anything that was creative wasn't accepted, right? If you write really dark music, and you write really dark verses, and you craft things that are kind of weird and in your imagination, you don't want to share that with like the popular crowd. So anything that was truly organically me, I denied and repressed, and I lived pretty much in my ego, in my head. And when I went to college, all I tethered to, like all my creative forms that are so organic to me, I got rid of, because I'm in college now, and I tethered to academic performance and social validation. And I didn't have anything that truly brought me in my heart. So I was all in my head. I lost sight of those those practices that grounded me and were my lifelines. And when both of those academic sort of social exercises failed, I was nothing, right? I had no personality. I had no essence. It just meant I was entirely worthless. So we need to, part of lifelines in my own practice is to build that sense of self, those lifelines, those things that give your life meaning and purpose, to tether to anchor us in the present moment, so that when we have those failures or those destabilizing events in our lives, we have something to ground us.
Yeah. Wow. That's exactly right. That's totally how it works. I mean, if you don't have that, then you come to that point that you got to, where you just feel like you're not there. There's no there. If you don't know yourself, you don't have that anchor. Yeah. So how did you handle that? What did you do?
Yeah. So, I mean, I wasn't even aware or conscious of it. So it led to a huge breakdown with a terrible eating disorder, because I tried to control the only things I could. And ultimately, without dealing with it, I met Doug, and he and I sort of decided to form this toy company. Again, I still hadn't recognized and unearthed all that buried emotion that was just latent in me. But gradually, I did end up graduating from college and working a job that wasn't who I was. And then Doug and I that's a whole story in itself about really finding that thing that makes your heart sing. But we were both kind of disillusioned and miserable in what we were doing right out of college, very briefly. And then at age 22 and 24, we were like, there has to be more to life. There has to be something that gets us out of bed each morning, that makes our hearts sing, and potentially can impact the world in some way greater than what we're doing. So we went away for a fateful weekend, and we decided we wanted to do something that impacted children, because children, like, if you can impact a child's life, like, you have, to me, done one of the greatest things you can do. So we decided we would make products, and that's a whole story in and of itself. But I think one of the main dots that connected for me, sort of, if you think about life as a series of random dots that sort of happen, and you might not know that they're meaningful when they happen, but I call them dot moments. And as I look back now over the arc of my life, like, it is about all these random dots connecting in a way that form this meaning of your life. So one of them was just by accident, sort of deciding that we were going to pool our meager life savings and start this toy company. And then realizing that I actually had this ability to conceive kind of toys in my mind. And that was like, no way, because I had this sense of myself that I had all this darkness inside me that I didn't want to admit. And that when I did channel it, I could only channel it into more darkness. So I was pure darkness channeling into more darkness. And because the things I channeled and created didn't ever see light, and they couldn't touch anyone, I never found meaning in them. So my creativity was meaningless. And it was actually just a nuisance I wanted to rid myself of. Mm-hmm. So whatever I created, which was continual, I just like either threw away or hid away. And I was like, get rid of it. Like, I just couldn't get it out of me. I wanted to literally like do away with it. But when I saw that I actually happened to have this ability to take that same darkness that had created all that darkness for the 2 decades, prior to Melissa and Doug, and I could actually just as easily, by my own will and choice, kind of like turn off the dark faucet, turn on the light faucet, and just channel it into that. It was revelatory. It was like I could breathe fresh air for the very first time. And that became the beginning of my spiritual journey, because that is the definition of moving from existential nihilism, which is where I was, which is this sense that existence is meaningless and we as humans have no ability to make meaning in a meaningless existence, to becoming inadvertently, I didn't know it at the time, but actually becoming an existentialist who believes that we as humans have the responsibility and ability to transcend our, sort of small selves and engage in the flow of humanity to make meaning.
Well, that's beautifully said. I totally agree with that, that we do create our own meaning.
We do. That's
ourselves.
And if we don't rise up to do that and engage in continual committed action, we will wallow, which is what when you believe you're a victim, which I did, and that's kind of the nihilism. I believed I was a victim of this despair that raged through me, and I had no ability to do anything with it. I was a victim. I was really in a very, very, very dark place. But when I realized that I alone could choose how to channel it, even though it still emanated from a very dark place, I could take, and it was like, I felt so empowered. It was the most incredible feeling. And, through some more dots connecting, I started to see that these qualities that I had viewed as a curse and wanted to kill, I despised myself because everyone told me around me that I was not good as I was. They told me that, you cannot be how you are. So I hated who I was. But when I started to see that maybe these qualities that were so disdained by society and myself actually could create something that could spark joy in a child, no less, and give them the gift of unleashing their imaginations, it was like, wait a second, maybe I don't have a curse. Maybe I have what I call now a blurse, a blessing that has a curse in it too, because living with myself is not the easiest.
Well, that's exactly it. That's what I spent a lot of time, working with people in the gifted education field, because, it's a two-sided coin. Yes, there's a lot of advantages, and then there's some things that can be problematic, with that level of intensity, all of that.
But it's all about acceptance. And really my journey, my spiritual journey came in realizing that I was human. I had never understood what it meant to be human. I thought there was only one way of being, which was perfect. And perfect is not human, because humans are imperfect, beautifully imperfect. But for me, there was only one emotion. It was great, fine, awesome. And there was only one level of performance, which was 100%. And I had never even understood what it meant to feel, to be sick, to say things like, I am sad. I never said the words, I am sad, until I was 50 years old, because there was no room for sadness in my life. It was like, wear a shiny smile, stomach it all, and that was kind of that was almost my, what's the word? My validation became like, I will smile through everything and never show a chink in my armor. And that's just not sustainable.
No, it's impossible, actually. Yeah. So that's great. You found that you had so much to offer. And I wonder if helping other people was an important component of what you discovered with your talents and your creativity.
It's everything. It's the connection. So we only find true purpose through serving others. I truly believe that. And if that piece is missing, you can have, and now, our practice, which we'll talk about in the next segment. But I think if you're having fun in your life, right? And it's all about fun and enjoyment, but you don't have that element of helping others, of touching others in some way that has the potential to transform their lives, you will enjoy your life, but you'll feel that something is missing. And that's the purpose component. So for me, it only came once I touched others. And the really fascinating thing is it wasn't even enough to do it through making toys. Because for me, even though I created the toy, right, and then it went on a shelf, it was still not direct enough to something inside me. And that's where the change started to happen, because I was creating toys for over 3 decades. And although it was my salvation in so many ways, something started to be missing. And what I realized it was the true essence of who I was. Because in creating these shiny toys, I was still only showing one part of my emotional spectrum, right? I was channeling it all into light. And it's part of me, but it wasn't all of me. And I started to feel, it was really weird. Like I started to feel like I was almost still living inauthentically, because I wanted to channel something deeper and really have the chance to face talk with individuals and share my whole experience, not just the shiny side, but actually share the darkness as well, to show them that they weren't alone and they could transform their darkness into light as well.
Oh, that's great. So that was the turning point. And this was just, like you said, 5 years ago, approximately.
5 years ago. Lifelines is only a year ago. But the journey, when I finally kind of reached that point, and I feel like all of us, engage in some form of resistance or denial. And I think when we're younger, it's easier to keep up those barricades, right? Because we're stronger and we can fight it, and we can say, I don't want to feel that, and just put it down there and think that it's just going to like disappear. But what happened to me, I think as I got older, and maybe it was I started to care a little less about what people thought, I started to feel more and more exhausted. And the word people use when they talk with me about sort of where they are in life, the word exhausted always comes up, because resisting the essence of who you are and trying to be someone else is nothing short of like the most exhausting thing you can do, right? We're denying ourselves. And I started to feel like more and more exhausted, and kind of the sense that I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore, but I don't know what to do, because I've never looked inward. I've spent my whole life looking out there and chasing everything and trying to be something sort of I'm not fully. And this idea of finally stopping the futile race, like I've been racing, like I haven't stopped for a minute. And in my affliction, ironically, my way to exist became incessant, rabid doing and creating and achieving. It wasn't like being in bed, unable to get out. It was the opposite. It was, I couldn't sit down. I felt like if I stopped doing, that drumbeat of mortality would be so loud that I couldn't bear it. So the thought, even though I wanted to stop, right? Every ounce of my being was like, Melissa, you need to just sit down. And I wanted to, but I couldn't. So I knew I needed help. And again, perfectionists don't ask for help. For perfectionists, help means, wait a second, I'm broken, I'm flawed, I'm imperfect. So like I never would have ever admitted I needed help and asked for help. But again, I got to that point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this. I'm tired of running. I'm tired of being unable to even sit down. I couldn't even sit down. Because I'd start to feel that existential anxiety. So I finally enlisted the help of a trained professional. And that's when the spiritual journey really began, because she is, she's amazing. She's like a yogi and a meditation expert, and has lived in ashrams. And I think, the journey really took 3. So I'm answering your question 20 minutes. The spiritual journey took 3 paths.
Okay. Well, the funny thing is, we're going to save that for the next episode, because we are just about running out of our little time limit. So it's great, because it'll give our viewers,
The 3 paths to enlightenment by afflicted Melissa.
There you go. Well, thank you for this part, Melissa. And stay tuned, everybody, for the next episode. We'll be right back with you. And I can't wait. All right.
There's more.
More to come. Okay.